Hello, Blue Room friends. I'm here to read you the last Mercy Watson book. This one is called Mercy Watson, Something Wonky This Way Comes. It was written by Kate DiCamillo and illustrated by Chris Van Dusen. Chapter 1. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson have a pig named Mercy. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Mercy live together in a house at 54 Deckawoo Drive. One Saturday afternoon, Mr. Watson said to Mrs. Watson, "My darling, my dear, there's a movie at the Bijou called When Pigs Fly."
I love this one.
"When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. "What an inspiring title. Mercy, did you hear?" Mercy did not hear. Mercy did not hear because Mercy was not listening. "It says here that the Bijou proudly serves real butter," said Mr. Watson. "Oh my," said Mrs. Watson, "real butter?" Mercy pricked up her ears. She was listening now. Mercy loved butter. She particularly loved butter on hot toast, but she would take butter any way she could get it. "Yes," said Mr. Watson, "it says here that the Bijou proudly serves real butter on every bottomless bucket of popcorn." "Bottomless?" said Mrs. Watson. "Bottomless," said Mr. Watson, "which means all you can eat." "All you can eat," said Mrs. Watson. "What a delightful concept." Mercy thought that all you can eat was a very delightful concept. "Let's go to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Let's," said Mrs. Watson. "Oink," said Mercy. Chapter 2. "Where are you going?" said Baby Lincoln. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "Oh," said Baby, "what movie are you going to see?" "It's a movie called When Pigs Fly," said Mrs. Watson. "Is it a romance?" asked Baby. "Is it a movie about love?" "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "I think it's basically a movie about pigs flying." "Don't be ridiculous," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Pigs don't fly. It's a figure of speech." "What's a figure of speech?" said Mr. Watson. "The movie title," said Eugenia, "is a figure of speech signifying the impossible." "Well," said Mrs. Watson, "we are going to be impossibly late if we don't get going." "Would you care to join us?" said Mr. Watson. "Oh, yes," said Baby Lincoln. "Absolutely not," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Oh, sister," said Baby, "please say yes." "No," said Eugenia. But she got into the Watsons' convertible anyway. "Where are you going?" shouted Stella. "We're off to the movies," said Mr. Watson. "What kind of movie are you going to see?" said Frank. "It's a romance," said Baby. "It will be inspirational," said Mrs. Watson. "It's a figure of speech," shouted Eugenia. "Is it a movie with a happy ending?" said Frank. "Oh, it must end happily," said Mrs. Watson. "Can we come too?" said Stella. "The more the merrier," said Mr. Watson. Chapter 3. Police Officer Tomalello had the night off. Officer Tomalello was at the Bijou Drive-In. He was with his wife, Mrs. Officer Tomalello. They were in the front row. "Is it nice to have a night off from the relentless duties of keeping the world safe from crime?" Officer Tomalello asked himself. "It is nice," he answered himself. "It is very nice." Mrs. Officer Tomalello smiled. Mrs. Officer Tomalello patted Officer Tomalello's arm. Animal Control Officer Francine Poulet was at the Bijou Drive-In too. Animal Control Officer Francine Poulet was with Alfred P. Tompkins. Alfred P. Tompkins and Francine Poulet were on a date. "Do you think there will be actual pigs in this movie?" said Francine Poulet. "I'm not certain," said Alfred P. Tompkins. "As an animal control officer," said Francine Poulet, "I have found pigs to be the wiliest clients of all." "Really?" said Alfred. "Absolutely," said Francine. "Although I did catch a pig once. At least, I thought I caught a pig." "Fascinating," said Alfred P. Tompkins. "Simply fascinating." He put his arm around Francine Poulet. Chapter 4. Leroy Ninker was a small man with a big dream. Leroy Ninker wanted to become a cowboy. But for now, Leroy was working at the Bijou Drive-In in concession stand. Leroy Ninker was selling bottomless buckets of popcorn. "Yippee-yi-oh!" he shouted. "There's nothing faux. That's right. It's a real butter, folks. Top quality, bottomless, and out of this world. Yippee-yi-oh!" In between pouring butter and popping popcorn, Leroy Ninker worked on his lasso skills. He twirled the lasso. He made the lasso whistle. He lassoed a bottomless bucket. He lassoed a stool. "Yippee-yi-yo!" sang Leroy. "There's nothing faux about my skill with the lasso." All right, friends, that's all we have time for right now. I'll see you again soon. Goodbye, Blue Room friends.